The content of this video, as well as the thoughts, views, and opinions expressed herein, belong to the presenter and do not necessarily reflect the views of Brigham Young University or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Hello, welcome back to another Inspire Ed religious education course. I am Dr. Jan Martin, and I am going to be your instructor for today's class, and I'm happy to be here with you. As we know, we're covering the second half of the Book of Mormon, and I get to pick a few highlight sections of the second half to teach you. So today, we're going to look at Alma 43 through 51, and my hope is to help you identify types of Christ in the war chapters, to help us with enjoying the war chapters a little bit better. So the first thing I'd like to start with is to have you all ponder this question. How do you feel about the war chapters? And, just be honest. You can just say what really is coming to your mind. Not everybody loves the war chapters. Some people do, some people don't, some people are ambivalent towards them and just, take them or leave them. I do want to share with you something that might surprise you about a Book of Mormon scholar that maybe you've heard of. This is Hugh Nibley, and he's great with his Book of Mormon scholarship. However, he admitted, I don't like the war chapters in the Book of Mormon. They make me ill. And so if you feel this way about them, you are in good company. Hugh Nibley felt the same. If you love the war chapters, that's fine too. And if you're ambivalent, I'm hoping to help you maybe find some more enthusiasm for them as we jump in. So one of the questions that's often asked about the Book of Mormon, why is there so much war? Like, this is a religious text. How come I'm reading about all these battles? Anybody who's looked at all of the battles in the Book of Mormon will learn that there's 15 major wars or conflicts that span the history of Book of Mormon peoples, and you just get them in various degrees of detail. But this is a place in Alma where we just get battle after battle after battle, and sometimes it can feel really heavy. And so why are they doing that? Well, if you remember, if you were here for our Alma 32 through 35 course, I taught you a couple of new words. And one of them was exegesis, which is our contextual, more academic examination of a text. So the first thing I want to do is give you some contextual reasons why Nephite people might have been so focused on war. So if you'll come with me really quick to Alma chapter 19, I'd just like to give you an example of this kind of principle I'm going to teach you. It's Alma 19, verse 27. And this is right in the middle of the Sons of Mosiah's mission to the Lamanites. We're looking at Ammon. A lot of you know his story, and he has this great moment where he gets to soften some hearts, and he's chopped off some arms, and he's saved some sheep, and he's done this heroic thing, and the Lamanites are just amazed by him, and they're talking about who he might be. And so that's the backdrop of verse 27. So let me just read it. It says, "And there were some who said that Ammon was sent by the Great Spirit to afflict them because of their iniquities, and that it was the Great Spirit that had always attended the Nephites, who had ever delivered them out of their hands. And they said that it was this Great Spirit who had destroyed so many of their brethren, the Lamanites." So this is an example of ancient people who think in a particular way. Warfare in the ancient world always had an ideological importance on both sides of the conflict. Ancient peoples generally viewed war as a contest between the god of one group of people and the god of the other group of people. So there were really nationalistic and mythic significance that's attached to these wars, and especially if you're successful. If you win all the time, your God is really cool. And so I just want to show you in verse 27 that the Lamanites and Nephites have this perspective. This isn't just about conflict with an enemy. It's about which God that we worship is more powerful. And that gives my culture a boost when my God is the more powerful one. So just understand one of the reasons why there's a lot of warfare in the Book of Mormon is because of the worldview of the ancient people that you're looking at. Now, let me give you another example of this. If you go to Alma 46, we can have a look at verses 21 and 22, and they're going to teach you again some of this nationalistic importance that comes with warfare. Now, this chapter is going to put us right in the middle of Captain Moroni. And you remember he is upset by a man named Amalickiah who's dissenting from the Nephites and creating some problems. And so his reaction to Amalickiah is to establish the title of liberty. Okay, and he's going to put it on this cloak of his and put it on this pole, and he's going to establish it. But I just want to show you, as they are talking about standing up to Amalickiah and his forces who are trying to destroy the Nephites, Moroni has this interesting exchange with the people who are responding to the title of liberty. So let me just read it. It says, "And it came to pass that when Moroni had proclaimed these words, 'I will be your title of liberty,' behold, the people came running together with their armor girded about their loins, rending their garments in token, or as a covenant, that they would not forsake the Lord their God. Or in other words, if they should transgress the commandments of God or fall into transgression and be ashamed to take upon them the name of Christ, the Lord should rend them even as they had rent their garments." Now, this was the covenant which they made, and they cast their garments at the feet of Moroni, saying, "We covenant with our God that we shall be destroyed, even as our brethren in the land northward, if we shall fall into transgression. Yea, he may cast us at the feet of our enemies, even as we have cast our garments at thy feet to be trodden underfoot, if we shall fall into transgression." So this covenant connection that they're having to their God and him protecting their nation in these attacks is really important. And what it does is it exalts the king or the nation's God because they win, and it illustrates this faith or lack thereof in the nation's God if you don't win. And so you see that there, the Nephites admitting that. If we lose, it will be because of us, because we weren't faithful enough, and we have this connection to our God. So hopefully that'll help you as you're reading along with the Book of Mormon to understand the ancient people's worldview about war. It really mattered to them, and it was really important in establishing the legitimacy of the God that they worshipped. Now, the other thing I want to help you with the Book of Mormon and war is Mormon. Mormon is our editor. He's going through thousands of years of Nephite history. He's got all of these plates, and he can only pick and choose a small amount of things to put on his record. So one of the major tasks that he has is dealing with the warfare. So which bits of it am I going to even include? There's probably a lot more that he could have included. And so I just want to show you, when we get to Alma 43 through 63, we have 20 chapters there. It covers 20 years if you actually look closely at the time that's passing. So we go from 74 BC to about 52 BC. So we have about 20 years of war. And really what Mormon is doing is giving us one chapter for each year of this war. So I don't want you to get the idea that he's obsessed with warfare necessarily. It does play an important role in ancient people's worldview. And for Mormon, he's having to carefully choose which pieces of these battles are important for us. And why would he do that? He's trying to speak to us. And as you know, we live in a modern world that is plagued by war. And if you look around right now, you can see several wars raging in different parts of the world. And we've always had a war somewhere going on in some part of the world for I don't know how long. It's been forever that we've had conflicts raging. So Mormon, who's trying to create a text that will speak to modern people, seems to see value in helping us see how they dealt with their wars so that we can have something to help us with ours. As you know, physical conflict and using weapons is not the only kind of war that we're facing. We also have the war against evil, and you can learn a lot from the war chapters to help you with that. So as I do, I'm going to keep using this map. It's especially helpful with war chapters so you can keep track of where the armies are and who's fighting who and what's going on. So I'm going to quickly just give us a little bit of the storyline. So if you come to the beginning of Alma 43, if you remember, if you joined us last class, we were looking at the Zoramites. Okay, they were this apostate group of Nephites who separated themselves in the land of Antionum. Alma sends his missionary friends and himself to go on the mission. They do have some success, and then the Zoramite leaders are upset about that. They kick all the converts out, and then they start negotiating with Lamanites. They're mad, and they want to attack the people who have received their refugees, and so we're going to have a battle here. So as you're reading along in this storyline, they're going to attack Jershon, where the people of Ammon live. The people of Ammon don't fight, and so they're going to leave Jershon and let the Nephite armies come in. And this is where you first introduced to the 25-year-old Captain Moroni. He's the chief captain, and this is going to be his first big battle as chief captain. Okay, as you read the story, the Lamanites are actually quite frightened by Captain Moroni and his army in Jershon because they have some really great armor. And so it sets them off. They just don't want to have this battle, so they run away, and they run to Manti. So as you're looking on the map, you can see we went to Jershon, we got scared, we're hightailing it into the wilderness. Maybe they won't know where we went, and we're going to hide over here in Manti. This is where the first battle starts. A lot of you maybe recognize that. The leader of the Lamanite opposition is Zarahemnah, and you have Captain Moroni going up against Zarahemnah. And chapter 44, you have a lot of exchange between the two, and you have that great scalping incident. I don't know very many people who read the Book of Mormon who don't remember the scalping part. Okay, and so that's all going on in the background of this story with our first big war here. And so you now have to ask yourself, okay, that was lovely, love the story, but what could I get that's meaningful out of some of these things? So I'd like to teach you a way to approach the war chapters. There are plenty of ways. This is only one way, but I certainly find it useful. And so if you want to come back with me to Alma chapter 37, I'm going to borrow some things from Alma and the way that he uses these things to teach with. So if you come to Alma 37, I'll just read you a couple verses. We'll look at verse 43 and verse 45. 43 says, "And now, my son, I would that ye should understand that these things are not without a shadow. For as our fathers were slothful to give heed to this compass," he's talking about the Liahona, "now these things were temporal, they did not prosper. Even so it is with things which are spiritual." And if you jump down to verse 45, we get our other idea. "And now I say, is there not a type in this thing? For just as surely as this director did bring our fathers by following its course to the promised land, shall the words of Christ, if we follow their course, carry us beyond this vale of sorrow into a far better land of promise." So there's two words I'd like you to highlight. If you like marking in your scriptures, I'd go there to verse 43 and I'd highlight the word shadow. And then I'd come to verse 45 and I'd highlight the word type. So Alma is giving us a great thing that we need to do with our scriptures. We need to learn to see types and shadows. We want to see the type and then see the shadow that it casts. So let me just show you in a visual form how that works. A type would be the white ball I've got sitting there. It can be a person, an object, an event that we see in the scriptures that can teach us something. Then when you shine a light on the object, because you're trying to understand it, it will cast a shadow. As you see on my screen there, we have a nice big black shadow. So the shadow is what I can learn from the type that I can apply to my own life. And as we see, shadows are always larger than the type. We can learn a lot more from a type than it actually has in its own self to share. So this is a really fun way of approaching the war chapters, and I'm going to use this and help us start identifying types and then learning how to see the shadow behind them and learning how to apply that to our lives. So what kind of types could I find as I'm reading through the war chapters? Well, let me just show you. There's lots. The war itself is a type. I could focus on righteous leaders. We've got Moroni, we've got Lehi, we've got Teancum, we then get Helaman. We can pick anybody like that. Or if I really wanted to learn some interesting things, I could focus on the wicked leaders. We've got Amalickiah, Amaron, Zarahemna, plenty of those. I could look at weapons, I could look at strongholds, I can look at strategies, and I can look at motivations. And these are just a small number of types in the war chapters that I could look at. But it makes the war chapters really rich and hopefully more interesting to you as you start identifying something that you might find fun to study. So all of these, as you're looking at them, cast very large shadows, and you could learn a lot picking any of them or any other one that you want to look at. So today, I'm going to have us practice analyzing types, and I'm going to pick one that maybe you haven't thought of. We're going to pick the people of Ammon. They appear all the way through the war chapters, and they're a really great group of people to study and see what we could learn from them. So I'd invite you to go over to Alma chapter 43, and we're going to have you looking at verses 11 through 13. So I'm going to do this one and let you pause the screen and let you read 11 through 13 really quick. And all I want you looking for is what the people of Ammon are like and what they are doing. Just focus on the type. Then when you come back, I will start helping you identify some of the shadows. So just go ahead and pause that, and then I will come along. Okay, hopefully you've been able to read and learn some things about the people of Ammon. First thing you'd want to learn is they don't fight. They made a covenant not to fight. They've changed their ways, and they don't want to get involved in war. And rather than fight, they will allow people to kill them. Very important. So in order to protect them, the Nephites had them come and live in their land, and we surround them with the Nephite armies. And the thing that the Ammonites need to do is just help the Nephites support their armies. So I'd like you to just focus on verse 13. Okay, there's a big shadow that you could learn here. And what are the people of Ammon doing? First of all, they're keeping their covenants, but second of all, they're allowing people to help them. And then thirdly, they're contributing, okay, a large portion of their substance to support the Nephite armies. So as I'm sitting there looking at this and say, okay, I see the type. I see we have covenant keepers, we have people who are humble enough to let somebody protect them, but who are also willing to contribute. What can I learn from that? And in a minute, I'm going to come back and we'll talk about how we can identify the shadows. Now, one other type that's in these same verses that we can pull out, and maybe you didn't think of this one either in my big long list of types, but another one we could study is why the Nephites are always outnumbered. So as you're reading along in verse 13, you see this. The Nephites are alone. They have to stand against Lamanites and Lemuelites and Ishmaelites, plus all of the Nephites who've dissented over the years. We know some of those groups, Malachites, Zoramites, and if you remember the trouble down in the land of Nephi with King Noah and his priests, they all dissented away from the Nephites and joined the Lamanites. And so we have this, if you look at verse 14, we have a number of Lamanites that is just enormous, and it overwhelms the Nephite population quite significantly. Now, another place you can see this, if you jump over to Alma 44, we can show you just quickly some of the challenges they're having with the numbering thing. If you look at verses 3 through 5, let me just get myself there really quick. You see that Captain Moroni is saying, when he's fighting against Zarahemna, that our God has delivered you into our hands. We are outnumbered. We know that we are. And the reason that you have been delivered into our hands is because of our faith in him. So we have a couple of really nice types here. We could learn from the people of Ammon, and we could also learn from how to handle feeling outnumbered by the opposition. So let's talk about that using some prophetic statements. So if I'm studying the people of Ammon, and I realize that they can't get involved in the war, but that they can help support the soldiers, what principle could I learn from that? Well, President Gordon B. Hinckley said, do what you can do in the best way you know how, and the Lord will accept your effort. A lot of us have personal circumstances that prevent us from doing what maybe other people can do, and these are the people of Ammon. They have this covenant. They can't get involved with the military side, but that doesn't mean they're left out of contributing, and they're able to contribute their financial support, probably supporting them with some food and some clothes, and some other things there to help the armies. So what a great principle to look for here. How can I help in good activities even if I'm not able to do some of the things that everybody can do? The Lord is still happy to accept my contributions. Now, as we look at that second type of being outnumbered, I love what Elder Holland has to say. He says, why is this so hard? I'm sure the Nephites asked this when they were always outnumbered by everybody. Why doesn't it go better? Why can't our success be more rapid? Why aren't there more people joining the church? It is the truth. We believe in angels. We trust in miracles. Why don't people just flock to the font? You will have the occasion to ask these questions. I have thought about this a great deal. I offer this as my personal feeling. I am convinced that missionary work is not easy because salvation is not a cheap experience. Salvation never was easy. We are the Church of Jesus Christ. This is the truth, and He is our great eternal head. How could we believe it would ever be easy for us when it was never, ever easy for Him? So what a shadow to learn from, just this concept of being outnumbered. We have a God that we worship, and He had a rough life when He was on earth, but He still managed to do what He came here to do and be successful. And He it is that is on our side. And so if you ever feel overwhelmed, ever feel outnumbered, ever feel like you're the only one who's trying to do the right thing, the Nephites felt that way. And I'm sure Jesus felt that way, but we're in good company, and we can manage. So we've only covered a couple types in the war chapters, and these are some of the smaller ones, but so rich and so helpful for us. Now, let's follow the war story really quick on the map. We have a lot of things happening in chapters 45 and 46, and so let me just quickly review with you what's going on. One key thing that you're going to find out in the war chapters is Alma departs. Okay, Alma's not going to be our prophet anymore, and Helaman, his oldest son, is going to be put in charge. So as you're reading Alma 45, you'll see Alma leaving and Helaman taking over. Now, why do we care about this? Well, it's what sparks part of our war. And so we do really want to notice that once Helaman is in charge of the church, he goes out and he's preaching the word, and people don't like what he says. Some people are really angry. One of them is Amalickiah. He does not like what Helaman's saying and doing. He also wants to be a king, so he just leaves the church and gains a following and is trying to overthrow the Nephite government. It's really interesting how some doctrinal issues really spark this war. And so this is what causes Moroni to react to Amalickiah. He makes the title of liberty, and then we have the title of liberty being put on every Nephite city. So this is our backdrop for the war continuing along. So we now have Amalickiah on the scene. So 46 and 47 will teach you about Amalickiah. He is a cunning guy, and he does some amazing things really quickly to leave the Nephites and to become king of the Lamanites. And so you watch him, he gets his little army, Captain Moroni comes after him, he gets scared, he leaves his army behind and sneaks over to the Lamanites and gets in with them. And he's able to poison people and do all these things and eventually become the king of the Lamanites. So are there lots of types in there that we could pick? Yes. I'm not going to pick those, but you could certainly start looking and learning from these events that are happening. So the types I want to focus on, just for fun, you could pick some other ones if you'd like to, are Captain Moroni and the title of liberty. They happen in the same chapter. They both have a lot to offer. And so what I'm going to invite you to do is, again, pause the video, and you can start with Captain Moroni. I've given you some nice verses there to read about him. So remember, what you're going to do is study the type. Study Captain Moroni. What is he like? What does he do? What does he say? And then we can start looking at shadows. And then you could also just quickly look at the title of liberty. What is it like? What is it about? What was it made of? How come it's on a pole? Why are they putting it on the tops of all their cities? How did people feel about it? And you can have some really nice study time. So I'll just let you pause, and you can work your way through those. And then when you're done, you can come back on and we'll talk about some possible shadows that you could see. Okay, welcome back. I hope you had some fun. Title, Liberty, and Captain Moroni are some of my very favorite types. So let's again use some teachings from our leaders. Let's say we looked carefully at Captain Moroni and we're trying to find things that we could learn from him. Most people have no trouble finding large shadows from Captain Moroni, but let me just share with you what Howard W. Hunter said about him. We could profit greatly by studying the life of Captain Moroni. He's an example of faith, service, dedication, commitment, and many other godly attributes. And most of you know how godly he is and how faithful he was. He's a passionate man as well, and so we could learn some things about handling our passions from him. We can learn about commitment. We can learn about keeping our priorities straight. He doesn't want to be someone who loves killing people. And so you can just have so much fun with Captain Moroni. He's a really strong type, can really use that as something to learn from. Now, Sister Bonnie L. Oscarson has given us some really great ideas about how to learn from the title of liberty itself. So let me just share with you what she said. There is a war going on in this world in which our most cherished and basic doctrines are under attack. I am speaking specifically of the doctrine of the family. I would like to issue a challenge for all of us to be defenders of the family, a proclamation to the world. We need to boldly defend the Lord's revealed doctrines describing marriage, families, the divine roles of men and women, and the importance of homes as sacred places, even when the world is shouting in our ears that these principles are outdated, limiting, or no longer relevant. Now, I don't know if you've thought about this, but Captain Moroni put this standard of liberty on every city. And it's all about our God, our religion, our freedom, our wives, and our children. So he's bringing the family right into the title of liberty. So Sister Oscarson, in making this connection to a standard that we have, is really great. So you just need to think about this. Today, what would I be putting as my title of liberty on my door? A lot of people I know have the proclamation on the family framed in their house, and they refer to it. So there's lots you could learn here from the type of the title of liberty and thinking about what that might look like for us today, how we can unify behind the proclamation on the family, how it helps us stand out, how it's really a banner that calls people from other faiths who believe in families to come and be supportive. So you could have a really fun time learning from the title of liberty and looking at the shadows that it casts. So we had you looking at all of these. Now, one additional question I just want you to think about is taking your study a little deeper. So I can learn from the war chapters to see types and shadows, but how would I see Christ in these elements? So let's just do a little talking about that. I had you looking at Alma 48 with Captain Moroni and what type of person he is. And so I just want to go back to some of those verses and have you think about it. What is Captain Moroni actually teaching me about Christ? So let's go have a look. Moroni is described very complimentary here by Mormon. So if you just have a look at verse 17, just imagine this being described as Jesus. Verily, verily, I say unto you, if all men had been and were and ever would be like unto Christ, behold, the very powers of hell would have been shaken forever. Yea, the devil would never have power over the hearts of the children of men. So we love Captain Moroni. Can you learn a lot about him? Yes, but once we take it a little deeper and start saying, how is Captain Moroni teaching me about the Savior? Suddenly you get more richness. Now, we don't want to just put Captain Moroni on a pedestal. Please look at verse 18. Ammon, the sons of Mosiah, that's Aaron, Omner, and Himni. The other sons of Mosiah, and Alma and his sons. That includes Corianton and Helaman and Shiblon. And just notice, they were no less serviceable. And so what can they teach us about Jesus Christ? Similar things. They were all dedicated. They were all making an effort and doing the best that they can. So you could have a lot more fun going one layer deeper. Now let's also just quickly look at the title of liberty. You saw how Sister Oscarson saw the family proclamation as a shadow of that. But just imagine Jesus as one of our title of liberties, that we would hold him up and what he represents and how he can be the light for our families as well. And so you can have a lot of fun with types and shadows here. Now, let's go back quickly to the map as we're moving through the war chapters and remind you of the storyline that's here. We're going to be looking at the next phase of the war. So Alma 48, we have Moroni waiting for Amalickiah to come and attack. Amalickiah has been becoming the king, and he's taken a little time to do that. So while he's gone, Moroni knows he's going to be back. And so while he's waiting, he's not just sitting there. He's working really hard to fortify these Nephite cities. And so in 48, 8 through 10, you can have a look at all that tremendous amount of physical labor that's going on to protect these cities. Now, as Captain Moroni was expecting, Amalickiah sends an army out of the land of the Lamanites finally, and this is in chapter 49. And so as you're looking for the storyline, you can see the first attempt of the Lamanite armies to attack a city now that Amalickiah is king. Amalickiah doesn't come with his armies on this occasion because he thinks it's going to be a walk in the park. He sends his army to a city that is typically known for its weakness and wants them to attack Ammonihah. Well, Captain Moroni has fortified Ammonihah to be a stronghold. So the Lamanites get there and they're like, oh, okay, we don't want to attack this city. So they do this interesting thing, and they decide to move to a city next door. That would be Noah. And they remember that Noah was typically a weak town as well, but Captain Moroni has made it a stronghold too. The mistake the Lamanite army makes is to swear an oath that they're going to attack the city of Noah. So when they get there, they have to attack even though they're afraid. So as you read Alma 49, the second attack of the Lamanite armies, we have 1,000 Lamanite soldiers die. No Nephites, and we only have some people who are wounded in their legs. So you just have to imagine the joy of the Nephite armies here, their love of Captain Moroni for protecting them and for being able to really dominate in this particular battle. Now, Amalickiah is really mad about it. He's going to regroup. So the Nephites have a little bit of a wait. If you come to chapter 50, what you're going to find is an internal ruckus between Lehi and Morianton. Those are cities. They're fighting over land ownership, okay? And Captain Moroni is used to kind of calm that down and resolve the problem. And in chapter 50, you find out that our chief judge, Nephihah, has died. And his son, Pehorn, is taking over as a chief judge. And those are just important little details while they're waiting. Now, in chapter 50, you get introduced to Teancum He's a great general as well, and he gets involved in the ruckus between the cities of Lehi and Morianton, and so you see that. And then we have a civil war going on in the land of Zarahemla. So just keep this all in mind. There's so much going on for the Nephites right now that has nothing to do with Lamanites, and they're really struggling to get along and to be a unified front. And Moroni in chapter 51 has to even put to death some of his own people because they won't support the ideas of liberty. So just be aware there's lots going on. You could find a lot of types in any of those stories that you could learn from. Really quickly, I'd just like you to have fun with the Nephite strongholds. It's a great type. And so what I've done is just pulled out some verses for you to have a look at these, and you can pause the video and just get a real good analysis going of how these strongholds are built and what I might learn from them. So I'll let you pause and do some study. When you come back, we can talk about those. Okay, so strongholds have an awful lot to offer you. And I'm just going to pick one possible shadow that you could use, and this is going to come from President Eyring. So remember that Moroni was waiting for an imminent attack from Amalickiah, and while he was waiting, he was thinking and trying to improve the Nephite situation so they'll be more likely to win, and he's raising the Nephite game. He already did it with their armor, and now he's doing it with their fortifications. So here's what President Eyring taught that I think is a good shadow for these strongholds. He says, "Time has taught me, and the forces around us increase in intensity. Whatever spiritual strength was once sufficient will not be enough. And whatever growth in spiritual strength we once thought possible, greater growth will be made available to us. Both the need for spiritual strength and the opportunity to acquire it will increase at rates which we underestimate at our peril." He taught this again, the spiritual strength necessary for our youth to stand firm just a few years ago will not be enough. The flow of evil has become a flood of sounds and sights and sensations which invite temptation and offend the Spirit of God. So like Captain Moroni, who knew it was going to be harder, he knew it was going to be worse, he had to up his game, and he does it with armor and with fortifications. So when Amalickiah comes to attack, he's more than prepared. So this is a great shadow for us to think about from the war chapters. Am I just kind of complacently going along with my spiritual strength that I've had for years? Or am I increasing my spiritual strength from day to day? Am I becoming a stronger, better person? Is my resistance to evil getting better? And you can think of yourself as a Nephite fortification. Are we improving you? And are we making you stronger and better? And what a great shadow from Elder Eyring to help us with that one. Okay, and then again, just like we did last time, this is something you can do. What do I learn about Jesus Christ from these strongholds? And what he wants from me? Well, he wants me to be like him. So I can't stay the way that I am. That means I need to keep improving and I need to keep growing. And the Savior's going to expect to find my strongholds getting better and myself and my spiritual levels improving. So you can have a lot of fun taking it one step deeper to the Savior. Now, really quickly, let's just finish up with this section of our war chapters here. We have the storyline going. Amalickiah has gotten over his little bitterness at losing his first couple of battles, and so he's going to come out of the Lamanite lands himself this time. He's going to oversee the army, and he comes in Alma 51. Okay, where's he going to go? I don't think it's a coincidence that he picks the city of Moroni. He's mad at Moroni, and this city seems to have been named after Moroni and built while this war section of their years is going on. So how interesting, out of revenge or whatever, he's going to come and take on Moroni. As you're reading chapter 51, Amalickiah has a lot of success. We don't get all the details about how they're getting these fortifications, but if you look in that little red circle I've given you, he takes over a lot of cities in the area. The only one he doesn't get is Bountiful up there, and so we have some difficult time here. Alma 51, Teancum, we love Teancum. Teancum does this amazing thing, sneaks into the camp of Amalickiah one night after everybody's tired from fighting, and he kills Amalickiah with a javelin to the heart. Okay, and so we're going to pause there with our war chapters. That's what we were supposed to cover today. There's a lot more we could say, but this is the point of this class is coming here. So let's end by reviewing. How could we handle the war chapters? Let's start looking for types and shadows. As you watch and study each type and then think about the shadow it's casting and how it could be applied to you, you'll get a lot more and have a lot more fun with these. And then, as I try to illustrate, you can find Christ everywhere in these if you will look for him. So we want you studying types and shadows, but we'd love for you to take it deeper and further in and start looking for the Savior. And suddenly the war chapters are less about war and more about finding Christ in those and what lessons I can learn. So I just want to share my testimony. War chapters can be a challenge, but we can certainly make them better with just a few little techniques. And I hope these techniques were helpful for you and get you a little more excited to study the war events in the Book of Mormon. So I just share that with you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.